After decades of piecemeal change to New Zealand's gun laws, the Coalition has overhauled the Arms Act, but it's not exactly the shake-up many were expecting and fearing.
The big building blocks are all still there.
This doesn't really go far enough.
The minister leading the rewrite, the ACT Party's Anneke Smith, wanted to go further, but her coalition partners got in the way.
I tried, I'm disappointed too, but I wasn't prepared to hold up the entire Arms Act to fight over it when there's a good win for everybody in it.
Kia ora, ko Anneke Smith aho, anei te pūrongo tō rangapū mō tēnei wiki. Welcome to Focus on Politics. The Arms Act has been home to New Zealand's gun laws since 1983, though it's had many iterations. Take military-style semi-automatics. After the Aramoana massacre in 1990, the government created a special class of firearms licence for those guns. Then, after the March 15 terror attacks, they were effectively banned, bar special licences for pest control and collector's items. That was what propelled Anneke Smith into politics. Here she is on Morning Report, shortly after the attacks, speaking then as the Secretary for the Council of Licensed Firearms Owners. She told Guy and Espiner the proposals would criminalise law-abiding firearms owners.
You've seen the legislation. What do you make of it?
We are very concerned about the unfair and unjust treatment of the New Zealand firearm owners. The 250,000 of them will be affected by this very widespread legislative change, which will, from the 12th of April, make every one of those 250,000 people criminals.
Yes, but given the magnitude of the tragedy and the massacre that took place in Christchurch, isn't this justified?
To make 250,000 law-abiding people criminals, that is not justifiable, no.
A shooting champion and firearms businesswoman in her own right, Ms Smith wasted no time once elected and sworn in as Associate Justice Minister. The ACT Party secured a complete rewrite of the Arms Act in its coalition agreement with National, with a commitment to provide for greater protection of public safety and simplify regulatory requirements to improve compliance. The wording was vague, and neither she nor the Prime Minister would rule out liberalising access to those military-style semi-automatics. That, alongside Ms Smith's background, caused many in the Muslim community concern, including leader Aliyah Danzaisen.
It does appear to be louder voices rather than the vast majority of voices in that case, and it's not saying that there aren't rights, but what rights are being impeded by this?
The months-long review and rewrite of gun laws culminated this month in a media conference in the Beehive Theaterette. Anneke Smith presented the new legislation and promised she had taken into account the weight of feedback from all sides.
The laws that followed March 15th were rushed, confused and unfair. They punished the wrong people. They targeted the responsible, law-abiding New Zealanders instead of the criminals and the gangs. Good law is not made in a panic. It's made with clear heads, sound evidence, and respect for those who already do the right thing.
The rewrite automatically disqualifies gang members from holding a firearms licence and extends health-related licence suspensions from 3 to 12 months. It introduces a statutory red flag system, so the police and other agencies can query whether a licensed firearms owner remains a fit and proper person, and creates a firearms licensing review committee so licence applicants can appeal decisions. Penalties for more than 60 Arms Act offences are increased and 8 new offences created, including one that makes it illegal to own a firearm without a serial number. The new Arms Act is also intended to plug gaps in existing law to address new and emerging technologies, such as the illegal manufacture of 3D printed firearms and parts. Ms Smith says people can still print guns, but only if they have the right licence.
This means that if somebody just has a 3D printed plan, which, say, a teenager might be able to download from the internet, and they don't have a firearms licence, that'll be okay for them. But if they happen to have a 3D printer and they happen to have the components to print and they have the plan without a licence, they will be committing an offence.
Crucially, the changes do not increase access to military-style semi-automatics. That type of firearm, used at Aramoana and the Christchurch mosque shootings, will remain only in the hands of specially licensed pest controllers and gun collectors, as is the case now. The rewrite extends pest control licences or endorsements from 2.5 years to 5 years, with a mid-term check-in to confirm the holder's circumstances haven't changed. It also gives collectors who own restricted firearms the option of storing vital parts of a gun at an address of any licensed firearms owner, not just someone who has the same endorsement. Regulations of high-capacity pistol magazines, those with more than 10 rounds, have been tightened, with only those holding a pistol endorsement able to purchase one. Nicole McKee says it was never her intention to weaken the law.
Commentators out there labelled me as a lobbyist and said that I was going to come in and do a whole lot of radical changes. We needed common sense changes that put the public first and have great respect for the licensed firearm owners who have already been deemed to be fit and proper people.
Philippa Jarsbeck, co-founder of Gun Control NZ, is one of these commentators. She has a different perspective on what's played out.
Nicole McKee has not been able to achieve her agenda. She definitely went into Parliament wanting to get rid of the registry and wanting to bring back semi-automatic weapons. We know she's tried both of those things and she failed at Cabinet. So the kind of broad shape of the law is still the same. There's obviously sort of detail that's changing and moving around a bit, some of it for better, some of it for worse. But that's really quite minor in the scheme of things when it comes to preserving public safety. The three big things you need are that firearms ownership is a privilege and not a right, and you need a registry and you need controls on the type of firearms. And those are kind of three major tools for preserving public safety. And obviously you can kind of improve and do a whole lot of things, but they're, those are the big ones that really save large numbers of lives.
On top of rewriting the Arms Act, the coalition deal guaranteed the transfer of the administrator of gun laws, the Firearms Safety Authority, from the police to another department like Internal Affairs. The rationale for this was that trust had broken down between law enforcement and licensed firearms owners after the March 15 terror attacks. While sworn officers will be removed from the authority and the organisation deployed with its own chief executive, who will report directly to the Firearms Minister, it remains within police. Nicole McKee says shifting the authority to another department ended up proving too costly and risky.
What I campaigned on was a complete uplift and shift of the Firearms Safety Authority out of New Zealand Police. When we looked into how we would go about doing it, the cost of it was exceptional. I was quoted over $500 million in order to be able to do this. There was also concern around the information that is captured by both agencies. We have been told that the Firearms Safety Authority is an independent business unit of New Zealand Police, but at the time of trying to separate them, we found that they were just so meddled with each other that to do that complete separation would risk the information that is held by both agencies.
Costs aside, it's clear there's been pushback against putting that much distance between gun laws and law enforcement. The Police Minister, Mark Mitchell, doesn't accept there's been a fundamental breakdown of trust.
I engage a lot with our, whether it be deer stalkers or firearms groups, firearms clubs, and look, they are fully on board. They're responsible people. They're not the problem. The problem that we have is the gangs, organised crime, and they're fully on board in terms of wanting to make our country a safer place, or as safe as it can be.
National also pushed back against liberalising access to military-style semi-automatics, even by way of a tightly controlled carve-out for competitive shooters. Mr Mitchell says National isn't interested in these firearms being more common.
It is a public safety issue, and we don't see that there needs to be a wider or broader availability around military-style semi-automatic weapons, so that was the position we took.
New Zealand First's leader Winston Peters says his party isn't interested either.
No, we weren't for that sort of thing, but we were particularly demanding that the authority go out of the police control and be independent authority, and that's where we got to.
The ACT Party has invoked the agree to disagree clause in its coalition agreement on the refusal to give competitive shooters a carve-out and the way in which a government review of the firearms registry was handled. The Council of Licensed Firearm Owners spokesperson Hugh Devereux-Mack is in two minds on where those two policies have landed.
There are a number of quality of life changes in this new announcement that will significantly improve the lives of licensed firearms owners, as well as improving public safety. A key thing that is actually a nice tone shift is the fact that the new Act looks as though it will start to put less of a burden on licensed firearms owners and start to focus on punishing or going after individuals who break the law and do harm within community, rather than treating licensed firearms owners as though they are a criminal waiting to happen or guilty until proven innocent, as the Law Society said during the 2019 reforms.
All right, so that sounds like there's a but though.
The but is that this doesn't really go far enough. There are a number of changes that were rushed through in 2019 and have sort of done the dash and proven they have not reduced firearms crime in New Zealand. Things like the register, things like the semi-auto ban, well, the supposed ban, those were brought in and ACT campaigned very heavily on reversing those. Now, we can understand that the register has been a compromise with the coalition partners, and so our disappointment is more with National or any other parties that stood against it, because there's no logic and there's no evidence that says it has helped anyone, and it does significantly put the licensed community at risk as well as the public at risk. When it comes to the semi-automatics, we can understand that there's no need for the wider New Zealand firearms community to have those, but some exceptions for competitive sport shooters who use it, or individuals who use firearms for pest control but are not professionals, being able to access those firearms to help maintain or lower the number of wild animals in the wild would be very helpful, even if they would have to pass a special endorsement with greater restrictions or time periods to prove that they are more fit and proper than those of us who've already got our standard ACAT licenses. That would have been good to see.
Pushed on whether licensed firearm owners are happy with Nicole McKee's efforts, Mr Devereux-Mack is complimentary.
We can't know what happened inside that cabinet room to know how hard she fought for this. So it's really hard to comment on her efforts, but knowing that she is an expert in firearms, as well as a former educator, we as a community have to have faith that she did what she could and that they've invoked this agree to disagree clause for a reason.
It's perhaps an unsurprising position from a group Ms McKee has formerly represented. She says it was always going to be difficult to please everyone.
I too am disappointed. The proposal that I took to Cabinet included very strict rules and regulations over who could operate large capacity magazines and semi-automatic firearms under strict range conditions, but it still was rejected by my Cabinet colleagues, so I tried. I'm disappointed too, but I wasn't prepared to hold up the entire Arms Act to fight over it when there's a good win for everybody in it.
Federation of Islamic Associations Chair Abdur Razak is hopeful the rewrite puts a pin in gun laws for a long while.
It seems the trajectory is right. The government has balanced the safety consideration and also the usage of the arms of the license holders. And we are particularly pleased about the MSSA, the current status quo remains. The issue about the registry and this is obviously work in progress. So overall, I think the trajectory is in the right direction. The 51 Shahada, the legacy, one of the key legacies of there was to make New Zealand safe, particularly from the menace of the semi-automatic killing machines. And it's good to see that the ACT Party has finally realized, and of course the Prime Minister has also noted, and of course Winston Peters, that this is the right way to go. And this whole focus on the safety of New Zealanders, all New Zealanders, we applaud.
How relieving is it for you that the government hasn't liberalised access to military-style weapons?
Keeping the status quo, we felt was absolutely fine. I think the legislation was fine when it was first introduced. And don't forget, when it was introduced, it had unanimous support from all parties except ACT at that stage. So I think that part of the legislation remains, albeit now the new legislation with a different name. But, I think we are relieved that this hasn't gone through.
Was there much anxiety in your community?
Significant. We had a meeting last weekend in Wellington on the national safety and security. The issue of the gun also came up there, because this is not these are not weapons which are used for, as some people have said, for sports purposes. These are used specifically to kill a large number of people in a very short time. And this is exactly what this terrorist did in the two mosques. So we are relieved for all of New Zealanders. And don't forget, this wasn't the first time. Aramana, we also had the same thing. So, we have learned a very hard lesson. I hope this particular thing is not going to be revisited in the next few decades.
Though major aspects the ACT Party had sought in a new Arms Act didn't clear the Cabinet table, Ms McKee says they'll rebuild trust of law-abiding firearms owners.
It's been a few years of a diminishing respect. We need to be able to get that respect back, not only for New Zealand Police, but for the regulator, the licensed firearm owning community, and for the general public out there, who many have this vision that we are nothing more than criminals ourselves. That is not the case.
The new legislation has yet to be drafted but will be introduced to the House before the end of the year. Ms McKee has committed a full 6-month select committee process to hear public feedback on what she's put up. That was Focus on Politics. I'm Anneke Smith. Thanks for joining us. Mā te wā.